1831, Robert and Mary were married here at Arlington, and from that union came 7 children, 3 sons, 4 daughters.
Robert E. Lee had 7 children, and of the 7, not one became a general. Not one tried to continue his military legacy. In fact, one became a congressman for the country their father fought against. Another sued that same government and won. And the 4 daughters? They all refused to marry, which in the 1800s was basically refusing to follow any rules at all. But that's not even the craziest thing about his children. This is what happened to Robert E. Lee's 7 children. Let's start with the son who took the U.S. government to the Supreme Court and walked away with $150,000. Number 7. George Washington Custis Lee. George Washington Custis Lee was the oldest, and he was a serious, studious guy. In fact, he graduated first in his class at West Point in 1854, the top military academy in the country, just like his father had done years before. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Custis had a choice to make. He was serving as an officer in the United States Army at the time. But when his home state of Virginia decided to leave the Union and join the Confederacy, Custis resigned his position and followed his father south. He spent most of the war in Richmond, Virginia's capital, working as a top military advisor to Confederate President Jefferson Davis. He eventually became a general himself. Near the end of the war, just days before his father surrendered at Appomattox, Custis was captured by Union forces at a battle called Sailor's Creek. After the Confederacy lost, Custis faced a very different world. In 1871, he became president of Washington College in Lexington, Virginia, taking over the position his father had held before dying in 1870. The college would later be renamed Washington and Lee University to honor both families. Custis ran the school for 26 years, quietly educating young men and keeping his family's name alive through academic work rather than warfare. But here's where Custis's story gets interesting. In the 1870s, he decided to sue the United States government. Here's what happened. The Lee family had owned a massive estate called Arlington, located right across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. It had been in the family for generations, originally belonged to George Washington's family, actually, and came to the Lees through Custis's mother's inheritance. When the Civil War started, the Lee family had to abandon Arlington. And during the war, the federal government seized the property and turned it into a military cemetery. They started burying Union soldiers there. Thousands of them. Custis argued that this seizure was illegal. The government hadn't followed proper legal procedures. They'd just taken the land because the Lees were Confederates and couldn't stop them. So Custis took the case all the way to the Supreme Court. And in 1882, the court ruled in his favor, 5 justices to 4. The court agreed that Arlington had been taken illegally, which meant that Custis Lee now legally owned Arlington again, all 1,100 acres of it, including what had become Arlington National Cemetery. Think about what this meant. By 1882, thousands of Union soldiers were buried there. It was already one of the most important military sites in the country. And suddenly, a former Confederate general, the son of Robert E. Lee, owned it. Custis could have demanded they dig up every grave and give him his land back. He could have caused a national crisis. The legal ruling was on his side, but he didn't. Instead, in 1883, Custis accepted a settlement. The U.S. government paid him $150,000. That's about $4.5 million in today's money for Arlington House and its grounds. Custis took the money and let Arlington remain a cemetery. Despite this very public legal victory, Custis was actually a private, even shy person. He never married. He never had children. In his later years, he lived quietly with his younger brother's family at a country estate, staying active in veterans' events, but mostly keeping to himself. Custis Lee died in 1913 at age 80. He was the last surviving Confederate general from the Lee family and had lived long enough to see the world completely transform. Now let's talk about the daughter who lost everyone she loved, then died on the exact anniversary of her father's death. Number 6. Eleanor Agnes Lee. Eleanor Agnes Lee was the 5th child and the 3rd daughter. While her sister Annie was known for being playful and fun-loving, Agnes was more serious, pious, intellectual, quietly strong. Agnes and Annie were inseparable. Just 2 years apart in age, they did everything together, shared a bedroom, shared toys, went to boarding school together. Family members called them the girls, or said they were like twin roses on one stem. That's how close they were. When the Civil War broke out, the girls had to leave Arlington and stay with relatives for safety. And in 1862, Agnes watched her best friend die. Annie got sick with typhoid fever in August 1862. Agnes never left her side. She nursed her sister desperately, even crawled into bed with her to keep her warm when Annie was shivering with fever. But on October 20th, 1862, Annie died at just 23 years old. Agnes was devastated, absolutely shattered. She was 21 years old and had just lost the person she was closest to in the entire world. But it gets worse. Around Christmas 1862, just 2 months after Annie's death, Agnes had a visitor. His name was Orton Williams, a distant cousin and close childhood friend. Most people believed Orton and Agnes were in love and might get engaged. No one knows exactly what happened during that visit. Some say Orton proposed and Agnes said no because she was afraid of losing anyone else. Some say he never proposed at all. Whatever happened, Orton left abruptly. 6 months later, in June 1863, Orton Williams was arrested by Union forces and executed as a spy. Agnes had now lost her sister and the man she possibly loved, all within a year. People who knew her said Agnes was never the same after that. She carried on because that's what people did back then. But something inside her had broken. After the war ended, Agnes moved with her family to Lexington, Virginia, when her father became president of Washington College. She had suitors. A few men tried to court her, but she turned them all down. The losses of Annie and Orton seemed to have killed any desire for marriage. When General Lee died in 1870, it was Agnes who prepared his body for the funeral. She dressed him in the suit he'd worn to her brother Rooney's wedding. It was an emotionally brutal task, especially for someone who'd already dealt with so much death. After her father's burial, Agnes's health started declining. By the fall of 1873, she'd developed some kind of intestinal disorder, possibly typhoid fever again, or maybe cholera. Sources aren't clear, but she grew weaker and weaker. On October 15, 1873, Agnes died at age 32. It was 3 years and 3 days after her father's death, almost as if she'd been counting down. Her mother, Mary, was so devastated by Agnes's death that she died just 3 weeks later on November 5, 1873. She couldn't survive losing another daughter. Agnes Lee never married, never had children, never really recovered from 1862. She's buried in the Lee Chapel in Lexington, right next to the sister she'd spent her whole life trying to protect. Now, let's talk about Annie. The sister Agnes never stopped grieving. Number 5. Anne Carter. Lee. Anne Carter Lee was born on June 1839. She was known as the Gentle One. Sweet, warm, always joking around. Her father called her "my gentle Annie." As we just talked about, Annie and Agnes were inseparable. 2 years apart, completely devoted to each other. Before the war, Annie actually had a pretty important role in the family. When their mother's rheumatoid arthritis got worse in the late 1850s, Annie took over managing the household. She helped educate her younger sister, Mildred. And here's something that was actually illegal at the time. Annie secretly taught enslaved children at Arlington how to read and write. In Virginia, teaching enslaved people to read was against the law. Annie did it anyway. When the Civil War started, 21-year-old Annie had to leave Arlington with her sisters. They stayed at various relatives' homes for safety. By 1862, the family was at a friend's place in North Carolina, trying to wait out the war. That's when Annie got sick. In August 1862, Annie came down with typhoid fever. High fever, delirium, and intense stomach pain. Agnes and their mother nursed her desperately. They moved her to a cottage at White Sulphur Springs, hoping a change in climate would help. It didn't. On October 20th, 1862, Annie Lee died. She was just 23 years old. Because the war was still going, the family couldn't bring Annie's body back to Virginia. She was buried in North Carolina, where she died. It wasn't until 1869, after the war, that Robert E. Lee and Agnes could visit her grave. In 1994, Annie's remains were finally moved to Lexington. Now let's talk about the son who lost everything, then became a United States congressman. Number 4. William Henry Fitzhugh Lee. William Henry Fitzhugh Lee was born in 1837. He was the second son, and by all accounts the most easygoing of the Lee children. Tall, energetic, the kind of guy everyone liked. Before the war, Rooney went to Harvard for a while, got bored, dropped out, and eventually became a farmer. He married Charlotte Wickham in 1859, and his grandfather gave him a plantation called White House in Virginia. Rooney thought he was set for life. Then, the Civil War destroyed everything. Rooney joined the Confederate cavalry and became a major general. But in 1863, he was wounded and captured by Union forces. They sent him to a prison in New York where he spent 8 months. While Rooney was locked up, his wife Charlotte died. He couldn't attend her funeral. His 2 young children also died during the war. Union troops burned down his plantation. By the time the Confederacy surrendered, Rooney had lost his wife, both his children, and his home. He was 28 years old with nothing. But Rooney didn't give up. He went back to what was left of White House and started rebuilding. He remarried in 1862 to Mary Tabb Bowling. They had children together. Slowly, piece by piece, he rebuilt his life. And then he did something nobody expected. He ran for Congress. By the 1880s, William Rooney Lee was serving in the U.S. House of Representatives as a Democratic congressman from Virginia. Think about that for a second. Less than 25 years after fighting a 4-year war against the United States, Robert E. Lee's son was standing in the Capitol building, taking an oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution. And he wasn't some bitter ex-Confederate either. Rooney was actually a moderate, pragmatic voice. He genuinely worked to help Virginia's economy recover. He tried to move his state forward instead of keeping it stuck in the past. Rooney served in Congress from 1887 until he died in 1891 at age 54. He was still a sitting congressman when he passed away. Of all the Lee children, Rooney represents maybe the best version of what could happen after the war. He lost everything, but he found a way to rebuild and serve the country his father had fought against. Now, let's talk about the youngest son, the quiet one who just wanted to farm and be left alone. Number 3. Robert E. Lee, Jr. Robert E. Lee Jr. was the baby boy, born in 1843. He was just 18 when the Civil War started, still a student at the University of Virginia. His mother tried to keep him out of the fighting, but by 1862, Rob enlisted as a private in the Confederate artillery. There's a story from the Battle of Antietam that really captures what it was like being Robert E. Lee's son. Rob was manning an artillery position covered in gunpowder and dirt. His father rode up to inspect. Rob expected some acknowledgement, maybe a moment of connection in the chaos. But General Lee didn't even recognize his own son at first. When Rob spoke and Lee realized who he was, all he said was, "Yes, my son. Do what you can to drive those people back." Then he rode off. Duty first. Always. Rob served until the end. In April 1862-5, his horse was shot out from under him and he got separated from the army. For almost a month, the family thought he might be dead. He eventually turned up in North Carolina and was paroled. After the war, Rob became a farmer. He inherited Romancoke Plantation and lived right across the river from his brother Rooney. The two brothers worked the land together during Reconstruction. Rob married Charlotte Haxall in 1871. But just months into their marriage, Charlotte died in 1872. Rob was widowed with no children. He remarried in 1894 to Juliet Carter, and they had two daughters. Rob named them Anne Carter Lee and Mary Custis Lee, after his sister who died young and after his mother. But Rob's real contribution wasn't farming. It was memory. In 1904, Rob published Recollections and Letters of General Robert E. Lee. The book compiled his personal memories and his father's private letters. It gave the world an intimate look at Robert E. Lee as a father, not just a general. What was he like at home? How did he treat his children? What did daily life look like at Arlington? Thanks to Rob, we know those details. Without his book, a lot of that personal history would have been lost. Robert E. Lee Jr. died in 1914 at age 70. He was buried in Lexington with his family. He'd lived quietly, farmed humbly, and preserved his father's memory carefully. He didn't try to be a hero, he just tried to remember. Now, let's talk about the youngest daughter, the one who never left her father's side. Number 2. Mildred Chuck Lee. Mildred Child Lee was born in 1846. She was the youngest of all 7 children. Her parents nicknamed her Precious Life, which got shortened to just Life. When the Civil War started, Mildred was only 15. She was at boarding school in North Carolina, but the school closed because of the war. By 17, she'd joined her mother and sisters in Richmond, knitting socks for soldiers and volunteering in hospitals. After the war, Mildred moved with her family to Lexington when her father became president of Washington College, and that's when she became essential. Mildred was the one who took care of everyone. Her mother, Mary, was basically an invalid, wheelchair-bound from severe arthritis. Her father was aging and exhausted. Mildred became their caretaker, their companion, their support. She and her father grew especially close. They took long walks together in the evenings. She helped with his correspondence. When General Lee fell ill in 1870, Mildred sat by his bedside, rubbing his hands to keep them warm. She was there when he died. After her father's death, things got worse. Her mother was devastated. When Agnes died in 1873, just 3 years later, Mary was completely broken. Mildred managed the household, cared for her dying mother, and held the family together. When Mary died in late 1873, Mildred was suddenly alone. She was 27 years old. Mildred never married. She had suitors. Several young men were interested in her, but she turned them all down. She once wrote about her father, "To me, he seems a hero, and all other men small in comparison." When you put someone on that kind of pedestal, no one else can measure up. After her mother died, Mildred lived with her brothers, splitting time between Custis in Lexington and Rob at Romancoke. In March 1905, while visiting New Orleans, Mildred had a stroke. She died on March 27th at age 59. She was the last surviving daughter of Robert E. Lee. Mildred was buried in Lexington with her family. She'd been the one who stayed when others left, the one who sacrificed her own life to care for her parents, the one who kept the family together. Now, let's go back to Mary, the daughter who did the exact opposite. Number 1. Mary Custis Lee. Mary Custis Lee was born in 1835, the second child. She was named after her mother, and from early on, Mary was difficult, headstrong, independent, not interested in playing by the rules. During the war, Mary did what most Southern women did: volunteered in hospitals, sewed for soldiers, endured the chaos. But after the war ended, Mary made a choice that shocked people. She decided she didn't want to get married, and she definitely didn't want to stay in Virginia. Mary had inherited money from the Custis family fortune. So in the 1870s, she did something almost unheard of for a woman of her time. She became a world traveler. Mary went everywhere. England, where she scored an audience with Queen Victoria. Rome, where she met Pope Leo XIII. She toured the Holy Land, Egypt, India, China, Japan, Australia. She loved adventure and apparently enjoyed the celebrity that came with being General Lee's daughter. Her famous name opened doors everywhere. But Mary wasn't just escaping Virginia. She was escaping her family. She spent years abroad, often missing major family events. She wasn't there when her sisters died. She wasn't there for her parents' funerals. Her sister Mildred once bitterly wrote that Mary left us to bear our sorrow alone. And then there was the streetcar incident. In 1902, 67-year-old Mary was back in Virginia. She boarded a streetcar in Alexandria with her African-American maid and sat in the whites-only section. The conductor told her to move. She refused. He called the police. They arrested her. The arrest made national headlines. Some people saw it as an early stand against segregation. This was 50 years before Rosa Parks, remember? Others thought Mary was just being her usual stubborn self, refusing to let anyone tell her what to do. Historians still debate her intentions. Was she fighting for civil rights? Or was she just too privileged and headstrong to follow rules? We'll probably never know for sure. What we do know is this. After the arrest, Mary basically shrugged it off and got back on a ship to Europe. She preferred life abroad, where nobody tried to tell her where to sit. Mary Custis Lee died in November 1918 at age 83 at a resort in Hot Springs, Virginia. She'd lived long enough to see World War I end. And that's what happened to Robert E. Lee's 7 children. What do you think about this? Let us know down in the comments section. If you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. While you're still here, check out the next video that pops up on your screen.